We're doing the class on positivity, on strategies, how to be more positive, this time especially. And one of them we said was working on optimism. And some people may think that thinking positive or looking on the bright side sounds naive or foolish. And people, people want to say, see things as they really are, and that you want to see things in a realistic manner. So they believe maybe if we're reframing negative events in a positive and optimistic way, or anticipating a better future, maybe that's wrong or unrealistic. And so someone said optimism is not about providing a recipe for self-deception. We know the world can be a tough place, but at the same time the world has beautiful parts to it, and it's abundant, and they're both true. There's the dichotomy of living in this life, and it's not like there's a halfway point. So we have to choose what we want to see more in our daily day-to-day life. We know that sometimes if we allow ourselves to be bombarded with the news, it could just, God forbid, make us see more of the negative elements of this world. And if we choose to see more of the positive and beautiful things in this world, then that's going to be more in our foreground. So that's our job, like choosing what we want to see in our lives. And that's what really being optimistic really means. It's the choice of how we want to see the world. Doesn't mean we're denying negative or we're avoiding all the unfavorable information, and it also doesn't mean that we're trying to control situations that can't be controlled. Rather, we're going on this research that shows that optimists are more and not less vigilant of risks and threat. They don't have their blinders on, and they're, however, very much aware that positive outcomes in life are dependent on their efforts, and they don't just wait around for good things to happen. So, as with anything in life, we need moderation, and that's like flexible optimism, to be, optimist in, obviously, when the situation calls for it. But when we need to know that certain situations we need to be more realistic, then we'll know. So but we have to develop that strength to be able to see and perceive and try to see better as much as we can. And there's another happiness activity, and this one is called avoiding overthinking and social comparison. There's a beautiful quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson where he says, finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities have crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. You shall begin it serenely and with a high spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. So, this researcher is saying during all the years that they've studied happiness, they've also been interested in the phenomenon called self-focused rumination, which can also be called overthinking, which is basically what it is. Overthinking is thinking too much, needlessly, passively, endlessly, and just excessively pondering like the meanings and causes and consequences of your character and your feelings and your problems, saying, why am I so unhappy? What will, what will happen to me in this situation? And some people feel that when they feel down, they should really focus inside and evaluate and try to get some self insight and find solutions that might ultimately resolve the problems and relieve unhappiness. And there's a lot of evidence and research challenging this assumption, that the truth is that it's the contrary. Overthinking really brings in more adverse consequences, because it makes the sadness become stronger. It really makes negatively biased thinking when we overthink. It really impairs a person's ability to solve problems. It takes away our motivation, and it really interferes with our concentration and initiative. And even though most people, when they do this, they think they're gaining insight during these ruminations, it's really not the case. They really are getting more of a distorted, pessimistic perspective when they're just doing this overthinking. So really overthinking it unfortunately it can cause more negative outcomes because if someone is just binding that negative energy. And so we know that it's really just not good to do that. It's not good to ruminate. And we really have to work to break the habit of overthinking and trying what we could do is reinterpret and redirect these negative thoughts into more neutral or optimistic ones. And that's something that really happy people have. They're able to distract themselves sometimes and absorb themselves in activities that divert their energies and attention away from those negative or anxious ruminations, because daily life is has these upsets and hassles, and obviously there's unavoidable things that we go through every day. And those who react too strongly sometimes have great difficulty shaking off this unfavorable information. So and they become weaker. So becoming happier really means learning how to disengage from this overthinking about both major and minor negative experiences. And becoming happy means learning to we don't need to look for all the bad stuff, and we should try not to let them affect how we feel about ourselves and life as a whole. And this researcher brings a story about her friend who was going through a hard time taking care of their mother who was really terminally ill. And she what she would do sometimes, because she was dealing with so much stress with her mother, was that she would visit the local farmers market. She loved being outdoors, being with all the beautiful produce, the warm bread, the fresh fish. And during that hour and a half, she really experienced complete joy. And she didn't let herself go into that despair and feel sorry for herself over all the tough things she had to deal with. Thank you, Luis. I'm glad I'm back too. Figured it out. So the the idea is that sometimes we do need to absorb ourselves. Even in the toughest times, we should find attention grabbing activity, stay busy, and feel joy. And one notable feature of overthinking is that it really takes away our mental resources. When we're overthinking, we're not really able to read. We're not able to 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 concentrate, whether in school or work or conversations, even when trying to have fun. And that's just not good. We want to. The best thing we can do is just be positive and try to break out of that when we're stuck in that cycle. Another one we said was social comparison. That's just never good. We compare. So one way, there's a few ways to break out of these habits. Some is to find like a good activity that helps us, that we know helps us feel better. Another one is to just cut loose. So really to stop overthinking as much as we can, stop comparing. And there are many strategies. One is, like we said, to just do distracting activity, that it's so engrossing that we don't go back into those ruminations. And so any activity that makes us feel happy, curious, makes us feel peaceful, or proud, um, read something, watch something funny, listen to a song that transports you, meet a friend for tea, maybe doing physical activity that gets our heart rate going. And whatever we do, as long as it absorbs us and isn't harmful, that's as good, as long as it takes us out of that overthinking and ruminating. So it's good to have those activities that are healthy and make us feel good and can get us out of that overthinking. And some people may say that isn't that just a short solution or a quick fix? That the idea is that the positive emotions that we create can really debias our thinking. It opens us up to new, more objective and more positive perspective on our troubles. It helps us really build our resources and skills, our creativity, our sociability, and problem solving skills that will help us in the future. And even if it's a short term mood, it's a transient lift in mood, it helps us feel energized, it gets us motivated to interact with people and more creative in how we can approach our problems. And that's what we need, resourcefulness in approaching our problems so we could really solve them. So the second strategy that we can use when we're overthinking is just stop, like literally telling ourselves to stop and using our intellectual powers about something else, whatever it is, like certain tasks we need to do. And that's, something that it takes effort, but the more we learn to control our mind, the stronger our mind gets. It's like a muscle, literally. Another strategy is to talk to someone who's truly sympathetic and trusted person, and tell them what we're feeling. And obviously, we shouldn't do it too much because we don't want to bring them down too. And the final strategy she brings is writing. Whatever it is, it helps us when we write about them because we can organize what we're thinking about that's causing us to overthink, helps us make sense of them and observe patterns that we haven't perceived before. And writing also really just helps us get rid of these negative thoughts and move past them. So another thing we should be doing when we're really plagued with these is we should act to solve these problems as much as we can. We need to gain new perspective on ourselves and on life. And when we gain this perspective, this helps us jumpstart into solving these problems that are really making us overthink. Whatever it is, take a small step. Maybe it's making an appointment with someone that can help, starting a new day of a program, doing research on the internet on something, writing an email to someone or someone who might have to do with the situation, maybe writing a list of every possible solution to a problem and trying to implement one of those solutions. And if we're having problems with this, maybe we can even speak to someone who we respect and admire and ask them what solution they would choose in this situation. So really acting helps us get out of that overthinking. That even small steps really helps improve our mood because it helps bring us relief and we get out of that overthinking. So what we should really try to do is try to dodge overthinking triggers. So we can write, situations, places, times, and people that seem to trigger that overthinking. And if we can, just avoid those situations or modify them enough that will move their ability to trigger these episodes of overthinking. Just like someone might be smoking, when they're trying to quit, they need to avoid like locations, times of day, or people that set off that desire as much as they can. And so we need to really strengthen our identity and work to build towards building our sense of self-worth. And this is obviously a big task in life, and it's a daily task. And like we said, start by taking small steps, learning something new, whatever it is. If there's something on your bucket list that you wanted to do, hiking, cooking, gardening, painting, working with your pets, working with your children, these things, these little steps, it really helps enhance our self-confidence and it gives us more sources of self-esteem and it expands our identity when we learn new things and it just helps us make us feel better as human beings. And another great technique where there's a lot about is meditation. It's it helps us relax, and it helps us get away from those worries and ruminations when we just focus on our breath, in breath, out breath, as much as we can, in breath, out breath, and learning to kind of, it helps us learn to quiet the mind and quiet those thoughts that seem to be very bombarding. So, and that's really been proven already that meditators have really highly developed frontal lobes of their brain. That, and the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, is really the part that helps relax us when we're under stress, and helps calm us down, and helps us to think of alternate solutions. And it's also connected to morality and a lot of other things. We know the saying from the Torah: if I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, when I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Hillel said that. So we do need to be for ourselves. But when we're for ourselves, we also need to. Thank you, David Shalom. I appreciate that. Means a lot to me. Thank you. Um, when we are for ourselves, what are we, right? We can't just be selfish. And if not now, when? Now is the time where we could take advantage of the situation and do what we can in today, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Especially in this situation, we see we don't know what tomorrow will bring, so we have to do the best we can today. So this is obviously showing us how we need social connections. And now in this crazy time of social distancing, I've seen that really just picking up the phone helps. Calling someone, people appreciate it. Maybe we can get back into sending letters. Besides emails, letters were really nice. And the power of these social connections to our health and well-being is real. And relationships really are the single most important factor responsible for the survival of our species. And we see from babies, they're such social creatures. We're wired like that, to need each other. And one of the strongest findings in science is that happiness and happy people, just they have better relationships than less happy people. It's just what it is. And so it's obvious then that investing in social relationships is a really strong strategy on the path to becoming happier. So one thing that helps is obviously practicing kindness, and another thing is nurturing our relationships. So this is obviously in our, thank God, as Jews we have this very strongly, just being kind, being generous, and v'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, you should love your friend like yourself. And that, like we said, that really helps us develop this power in our brain of being happier. And we know that compassion has to do a lot with morality, and we know that it's important for its own sake, and it's the right and good and ethical thing to do. And scientific research has just shown that really it's not only good for the recipient, but it's also good for the doer. So even when it's unpleasant sometimes, or we know that we're not going to receive anything in return, it really just helps us, and we know that it makes us happier. So there's many sayings, if you want to be happy, practice compassion. True happiness consists in making others happy. Without kindness, there can be no true joy. Now we've really proven this scientifically, and there's correlation between happiness and helping. And they've proven that happier people are more likely to describe themselves as doing frequent altruistic acts, shopping for sick friends, stopping to help strangers, or spend a greater percentage of their time helping others. And they even perform behaviors at work that are beyond the call of duty, like helping colleagues with work problems despite their own heavy workloads. I'll just do a recap of tonight. We said that some people may think that thinking positive and being optimistic may be naive, but what we're saying is that obviously we're doing it in a realistic manner. This world is a dichotomous world. This world has both sides. There's the negative and the positive, and we could choose what we put in our personal foreground. That's our choice. What we focus on more in our lives, that's our choice. And by focusing more on the positive and seeing the positive more, it just helps us more. Especially nowadays, God forbid, it's so easy to get sunk in negative thinking. So we really have to work hard on being positive and being happy and seeing the good. And obviously, we know that doesn't mean trying to control situations that can't be controlled. We said that research has shown that optimists are vigilant as well of risks and threat. They don't have their blinders on. They're not just blind. But they're aware that positive outcomes are really dependent on their efforts, and they don't just wait for good things to happen. We have to do. We live in a world of action. We said that we should really avoid overthinking and social comparison, and we gave a few strategies for avoiding overthinking. We said that something that's good to do is getting into activities that distract us. Really, just like having fun. It gets us thinking positive. Activities that that help you, and that they engross you and take you away out of that thinking, and think anything that really arouses your curiosity or your creativity. Reading something funny, watching something funny, listening to music that gets you into a different state of mind, meeting a friend, doing physical activity that gets our heart rate going. Whatever you're doing, as long as it absorbs you and compels you and it's not harmful. And and that really helps to get us out of that ruminating overthinking, we said. Some people may think that, hey, isn't that just a short-term distraction and a short-term fix? The positive emotions in that really help us debias that overthinking, and it opens us up to more objective and more positive perspectives on our problems, and it helps us become more resourceful, and it helps us create skills with like creativity, sociability, and problem solving skills that are useful in our future. And even if it's a transient lift in mood, it helps us get energized. It helps us get more motivated to interact with people and more creative in how we're approaching our problems. And if someone is just, another strategy is just stop. Just say stop. Stop to our mind. Really just say enough. You know, and start thinking about maybe certain things I need to do, and that will help. You know, Another one is talking to someone who is sympathetic, trusted, that can help us, And just another one we said is writing, just kind of dumping it on the paper, and it helps us to just unburden ourselves. And then we can act to solve our problems. We need to gain new perspective. So by acting to solve our problems, that really helps us start to feel some relief. So whatever we need to do, we need to start thinking about strategies, whether it's improving relationships, physical things. We really should research it, and that helps us relieve stress also, because it helps us feel we're tackling the situation, and it helps us feel powerful and not powerless. So sometimes we need to do things that we need to dodge overthinking triggers, you know, go away from places that maybe get us overthinking people, situations, you know, and we can start by doing small active steps in terms of building. We said in terms of doing activities that help us feel and build our self-worth. Anything you've been wanting to do that helps, because this really helps us feel competent and 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 positive. And we said another one is meditation, learning, learning, learning how to focus on our breath, and and really see the thoughts coming in, and just go back to our breath. So it helps us work on, when we have these overwhelming thoughts, how to deal with them, and how not to, that they shouldn't be so overwhelming, because we see we're in control, because we're mindful and we're becoming more in tune with our mind and in power of our mind. And the last one we said was social connections. We said from the Talmud, it says, Hillel, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? So we need to take care of ourselves. But when I'm taking care of myself, what am I? And if not now, when? I need to take advantage in this moment, because this is the moment. I do not know what tomorrow will bring. And in this moment, I can affect positive change and take control, and do better in the world. We're social beings. From the moment we're created as babies, we're dependent on each other. And that's something that really has a big deal to do with happiness, being generous, because we know that compassion has to do with morality, and that really has to do with happiness is giving and just being. And it's really been scientifically proven already. I wanted to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you for the nice comments. It really makes me happy to see people are enjoying this. And I will continue Bezrat Hashem next week. Next Sunday night, we'll do another positivity class. I'm trying to get new resources to really make it fresh and fun, and just keep us resourceful in this challenging time, because we really have to be strong for ourselves and our families, and just stay positive. We'll be continuing the Psalms and the Torah classes. Tomorrow morning at 10 is the Psalms, and at 8:30 p.m. we do a Torah class. God bless you all, and have a great night, and thank you so much for tuning in. All the best.